Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Thursday, June 27th. Yep, almost the end of the month. Going into July for the 4th of July weekend and festivities. So I thought we'd talk today kind of about generational changes and specialty equipment. So hang tight. All right, so welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know that, and this is the weekday, Monday through Friday, and it's available on podcast as well for your listening pleasure. So today we're talking about specialty tools and generational shifts. And let's start with the generational stuff, all right? In my lifetime, I have seen where it used to be a lot of small shops, you know, and everybody knew everybody, right? And even if you lived in the city, you had your local car mechanic, and sometimes they did the lawnmower repairs too, which was a push mower. But in the town that I grew up, we had two car mechanics, and both of them had gas stations, and they were different. I think one was Sunoco and one was Mobile. But the one that had the Mobile, I remember because they had a pool table, and I think it cost like 50 cents to play. But we used to take and slip in back then, your matches were all over the place. So we took a match cover, and you could shove it above those two slots, push it in, pull it back out, and it would think it read that two quarters were in there because there wasn't any hole there. So it would automatically let you play a game till he caught on to what we were doing. First he chewed our asses, and then he just kind of laughed about it. He said, "Kids will be kids." But we used to hang out down there. Again, everybody knew everybody. And, you still had your guys that did the work on their own vehicles when it comes to oil changes and tire rotations and brakes. And then you had the ones that didn't even want to come close to getting dirty and touching it. And so the two garages stayed fairly busy, and the town population might have been 1,200 people. And I'm sure they counted cats and dogs in that. It was a small town. That small town now has one convenience store with a gas station. There's no mechanics in that town. There used to be basically two grocery stores. The one concentrated on frozen stuff and convenience stuff, like you would see in a convenience store, right? And the other one specialized in like being the local butcher. They did all the prime cuts, and sold a lot of sandwich meat. Actually, they would even make subs for you or a sandwich. Neither one of them are there anymore. They're gone. There was three churches in that town. You had the Catholic, you had the Methodist, and then you had the Seventh-day Advent. Outside of town, you had the Jehovah's Witnesses. But now, since less and less people are going to church, like the Methodists, they now have combined like 4 or 5 different townships, like 4. And what they do is the first Sunday of the month, you go to this one in this town. The second Sunday of the month, you go to the one that's over at neighbors, the village over, which is usually, 5 to 7 miles. And then the third Sunday of the month, you go to the one that's a little further out. But everybody is traveling, so they can still keep the church open. But the same pastor is now doing all those townships, but only one location for that week. So you have to remember which Sunday is for which church if you want to go to church. The Catholic Church in that town is no longer there. They travel to a bigger village where they've got community colleges and stuff like that, so there's a bigger turnout. And the Seventh-day Advent, they tore that down. So basically you have one church that only works one Sunday a month. That's what I mean by generational changes. Sometimes it takes time over time to see those changes. And I can only assume that, somebody twice my age or my age back when I was a kid was also looking at the generational change of used to be one person in the household worked and the other one stayed home and raised the kids. And kids minded a lot better back then. Schools weren't being used as babysitters, as taking the place of parents. Parents knew what their responsibilities were, and there wasn't anybody going to tell them how to raise their kids. Nope. Not unless, and most times the one that's telling you how to raise your kids has never raised a child before in their life. Has never had a child. Go figure. So you have one person working, and the size of homes were a lot smaller. You didn't have, 2,500 square foot homes for a single person now. And now you do, right? Or when I was growing up, it was starting to change. And most often they had just the one car, and that was for the one to go to work and come home and then use to get groceries, go on vacations, and so forth. And then we started to see that generational shift of way before my time of the women's movement and the women going to work. And next thing you knew, houses started getting bigger. Instead of having one car, now they had 2 cars in the driveway. You see what I'm saying? Things start to change. If you go back far enough again, most people were farmers. Were dirt poor farmers. And they raised what they needed to eat and maybe a little bit to sell. But they spent most of their time in the fields working, right? And a lot of kids that grew up in that environment, if they could get to do something different that wasn't as time consuming and it's hard work and get paid better money, they did. So you started seeing the single family farms start to diminish on going from it's all over the place to not hardly anywhere. And what I can tell you is in my generational time, and I've said this before, I think, on this channel, I used to be one of 17 or 18 different dairy farms just on our road here in a 7-mile stretch, all right? And we were all producing milk. We had the bulk tanks, we had the cows, milk machines, we had it all, right? And somewhere along that lines, we had to start working out just to cover the grain bills and stuff like that. And while we were checking and working out, we found, hey, wait a minute, we're not working anywhere near as hard, and we're getting paid better money per hour. So farming is a lifestyle. It's something you really want to have to do. You don't want to have to do it. When I raised my kids, they had their chores and stuff. But I always kept in the back of my mind, is that the farm was something that my wife and I wanted. And my kids could take it or leave it. If they wanted to continue farming, you probably could take over the homestead. If you didn't and you wanted to go in a different direction, do it. Now there's only one farm on our road. And they had to go from a 60 cow dairy to a 250 cow dairy just for the cooperative to send a milk truck out to their farm to get their milk. Had they stayed as a 60 or 70 or 80 cow dairy, they probably wouldn't have come and got their milk. But you go the same mileage a different direction and you hit, it's still classified as a family farm, but they're milking 3,500, expanding to 4,500 this year. So you're getting less people involved, but you're producing more, if that makes any sense. So what changes have you seen, in your lifetime that are generational in your area? I'd love to hear about it. All right, so let's jump over to the other topic, and that's specialty tools. And, I'm kind of surprised sometimes, and maybe you could tell the rest of us what you do in your shop, whether you're a mechanic or the owner. Who supplies the specialty tools? Good question. See, the way I've always done it in our shop is I do. And that is so if Claude were to retire, the specialty tool would still be there for the next guy, me, or whoever, to use, right? And we're not a big shop. Not by any means. We used to be. And bigger isn't always better. Which I guess. But I happen to be listening to my son and Claude, and they're both mechanics. Claude, before he got into work on a small engine and stuff, actually worked for a Chevrolet dealership. And he was a Chevy mechanic. And he had all the certificates and everything, Master Tech and all that. And he did that for quite a few years. And my son works for a Ford dealership. So he is climbing the ladder, getting his certificates to be a master mechanic in that field. And I was asking them, what about specialty tools? And Claude had said that the Chevy dealership, if it was a Chevy-only tool for just working on Chevrolet cars or trucks, then the dealership bought it. If it was something that you could use on all these different type models and makes and all that, then you as a mechanic supplied it. You had to buy it. And the way things have changed is my son was telling them, because they've gone from actually diagnosing stuff to now you have a program that you download to your laptop or your iPad that you plug into the unit, and you can make a lot of different calibrations on it, right? And he was telling me, my son was telling me and Claude that no, that they're required to buy all that. to buy the computer, to buy the subscription to the program for the laptop, an iPad. Which, in a way, I can see it. But if it's Ford specific only, why isn't the Ford dealership supplying? Why isn't Ford supplying it? That doesn't make sense to me. But that's how changes have come about, is if it's a run-of-the-mill tool, I can see. If you're a mechanic, you need to have a good set of tools. And if you're working in a shop where there's two or three mechanics, what I've seen a lot of times is one mechanic will buy this tool that works on all these different vehicles, all right? And then the next mechanic, he'll buy something different than the first one. Excuse me. And then they just kind of use each other's so that they're not outlaying as much in tools. Because, one thing I will say is that my son is Snap-on all the way, and that's what Claude was when he worked for the Chevy dealership. They both were getting paid to make money with wrenches. Me, on the other hand, I got my Craftsman set years ago. I've used Harbor Freight on the farm for years, dating back 50 years ago. The tools when I worked on the farm were Harbor Freight because that's what I could afford. That was a guy's tool that was affordable. And they warranted them, just like Craftsman and Snap-on. So I like to hear what, like in your shop, or if you're the mechanic, or if you're the owner, what tools do you supply and what tools don't you supply? I'd be curious to know. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. It's going to be a short one today, or shorter. But I'm interested in, the specialty tools that are out there. And if you're a shop owner and you're not buying the tools, why not? And if you're a mechanic, if you are buying the tools, why? And I know what you're going to probably tell me, but I'd like to hear it. And then the generational changes, things change in life, right? You can't always remain a constant. We keep evolving. And now the AI is involved. You're going to see it moving a lot faster paced in the same sense as we did for the past 50 years. Hopefully in my lifetime, I'd like to be able to see interplanetary travel. If there's something more other beings out there, I'd like to meet them. So on that note, you guys have a great Thursday, and we'll catch you here bright and early tomorrow morning. Again, thanks so much for watching.